Madison Keys has a great Australian Open. She's in the semis against Ash Barty, and in her wins against Sofia Kenin, Paula Badosa, and Barbora Krejcikova, her serve has really been a weapon, and that's why we're going to take a look at it today, and I will point out the elements of her serve that you can copy. My name is Meike Babel, former top 30 WTA pro. If you like my videos, please go ahead and click the subscribe button, click that little bell at the top that will tell you when I put out new content, because that is a fantastic way to support my channel. And now let's jump into Madison Keys' serve. The reason why Madison Keys' serve is so good is that it is simple, yet fundamentally perfect. There's not one piece in this entire motion that she doesn't need and that she doesn't execute very, very efficiently and very effectively. Fundamental number one that you need to hit a good serve is, of course, your continental grip. So keep working, if you're not having it yet, to make those changes, because you will get maxed out really quickly if you do not have the proper grip. Second thing that I want to point out is her stance, because that oftentimes is also fundamental, that if you have flaws right there, you will have issues later on in the motion. In your stance, the tip of your left foot should point to the right alley. If you're too open here in this position already, you're going to have issues later on. So you do see here that Madison's tip of her front foot, of her left foot, is turned sideways, and it would look toward the net post. And that, of course, keeps her entire body side on to the court. You will see the distinction that the pros very much so stagger more extremely than what I think is necessary for what we do on a rec level. You do see that the right leg, right foot is staggered to the left side quite significantly. And to my mind, that we don't need to focus on quite as much on the rec level, but you definitely want to have one leg behind the other with the right leg slightly behind the left. What I want to draw your attention to are two things on the ball toss. Number one, from the separation of the hands and racket right here, her left arm stays absolutely straight. It only starts to bend right here in the preparation to get into the cocking position. We'll talk about that later. But what is really important, that as she's guiding the ball up, it continues to stay completely straight. And then as she releases, you see that here the ball is at the tip of her finger. So it's not cradled entirely in your hand. And the release is about eye level to top of the head. And to have your arm straight and the proper release point will, of course, add to consistency in your toss. The next component that I want to point out to you, and that is one of the ones where I think a lot of players get into trouble, is that as Madison gets her right arm, her hitting arm up, notice the position of her racket head. It points down. And the reason for that is that she keeps her wrist very, very loose. So what we do want to do in this position is that the racket face is still pointing down, and here in the loading position, the racket face, the side with which you're going to hit the ball, is pointing to us. You may have heard of the dreaded waiter position, and that would mean that in this position here, we would see the wrist laid back, pointing to the stance back there, and the racket face would basically point up to the sky. And that is exactly what we want to avoid. So by having the wrist really loose and focusing on keeping the racket face closed, you avoid that problem, which is very, very common for rec players. The next thing that you're doing by having the wrist as loose is you're creating a slingshot effect. There is a little bit more pop on the ball if you keep your wrist fairly loose. So next stage in your serve is the loading position. Now, Madison prefers a platform stance, and that enables her to really drop down and back. This here is sheer perfection. Couple of things to notice in this loading position: shoulder over shoulder and hip over hip, meaning that you are still completely side on to the court. The elbow is at its lowest as the legs are loaded to their maximum. And you notice that when I get her out of here, that she's loading down and back. Her right hip actually turns more to the left. And this is for maximum load. As she's coming out here, she's now getting into the cocking position. And this is also something that is sometimes difficult to achieve for recreational players because we have limited mobility, we have different levers, we have different flexibility, we might have different strength. But the components to hit if you want to have a great serve is, again, that you are still fairly side on, and now you're in a reversed shoulder over shoulder and hip over hip. Left arm is tucked in front of the belly button, and the tip of the racket points down. The inside of the wrist, the inside of the elbow, and her chest all point up. And as she's making contact, there is a tilt. And she's making contact in front, and she's making contact inside of the court. And those are the fundamentals that are really beautiful to watch when she's serving. The follow through and finish, landing on her left leg. The left arm kicks back a little bit. And then, of course, we have that little dog leg on the right. And that's just an effort of your body to get back into balance. So looking at Madison Keys' serve from the side and the back, I just want to stress one more time the key components that we can copy. One is the straight arm. The entirety of the toss, your arm should be straight. Release point between eyes and top of the head. We see that here as well, not quite as clearly. And then the looseness of the wrist to make sure that you have the side with which you're going to hit the ball pointing down, and you're getting a little bit of the benefit of what I call the slingshot effect. Ideally, you want to get into this loading position right here, and then cocking position, acceleration up, contact point, and then the follow through and finish. So let's see how Madison Keys fares against Ash Barty. Still having Ash Barty ahead of her there and making it into the finals. But if there is an upset, Madison Keys' serve will have played a huge role.